There's no question that the world order we have been living with since the end of World War II is collapsing. We have lived through an unprecedented period of human history. Never has there been such a long period of peace and unprecedented prosperity where the whole world has been lifted. But now we are witnessing the wheels coming off. Of course, here in America, Trump and his minions are successfully implementing a fascist government, and no one seems to be able to stop him, including the Supreme Court, who is making up law as they go along, ignoring the time-honored concept of using precedent to guide their decisions. This concept has only been around since the Magna Carta. In Western democracies, we see how far-left policies of unlimited immigration are threatening their very existence. Life in Canada is completely unsustainable. Germany is actually kicking out the immigrants that they welcomed with open arms 10 years ago during the migrant crisis. Sweden is actually paying people to go back to their countries of origin. As a matter of fact, it's 20,000 euros. And what's happening in Britain is beyond alarming. Witness the Glastonbury concert this past weekend, full of white middle-class Britons carrying Palestinian flags while chanting death to the IDF. Disgusting. Being goaded on by a singer of immigrant parents who hates Britain so much, he tells the crowd of white people that white Britain better watch out as they are coming to them. And their reaction? They cheered. What the fuck? Anti-Semitism is off the charts in Britain and growing by leaps and bounds here in America. The world is in serious trouble and the US is falling off a cliff. There's no shortage of things to talk about today. So today I want to talk about how the Democratic Party is absolutely dead. That to save things, they cannot keep doing the same thing, be for the same causes. They have become irrelevant. The fix will not come easily. So they decide to elect a self-described Democratic Socialist as a Democrat to run in the general election for New York City mayor in November. Zoran Mamdani. This supposedly came as a great surprise to the political class. I really don't understand why. He ran against an extremely flawed Andrew Cuomo. It was a very low turnout election, which usually produces results at the political extremes. However, I will give credit where credit is due. His team ran an incredibly effective campaign. Like Obama in 2007, they understood that by using the powerful new tools of social media in an effective way, that they could reach young voters. And that's exactly what they did, to the surprise of many. Again, I don't understand why it should be a surprise to anyone in the political business. If you're going to run a campaign in 2025, you had better be savvy as shit about how to use social media in effective ways. You had better be much better prepared to be bold and willing to take chances. Something missing in what we saw in the disastrous campaign for the Dems that they ran for Harris for president. Things happened in that campaign that I would consider absolute malpractice for a modern campaign. I actually did a video back when all that happened, before Pluff and his team did a video with Podcast America talking about what went wrong. I actually outlined three things that I felt they really did badly, and they did touch on all three, but their excuses and what they answered was telling, in the sense that either they were lying and they knew better, or they didn't know better. I don't know what, but it was a disastrous campaign. So what is a Democratic Socialist? And is he really electable in the general election? How did we get here? Are he and AOC the future of the Democratic Party? Really? So I asked Google AI what a Democratic Socialist is. Democratic socialism is a political ideology that combines democratic governance with socialist economic principles. It envisions a society where the means of production are owned or controlled by the public rather than by private individuals or corporations, while simultaneously upholding democratic principles and practices. Democratic socialists believe in a political system where the power is vested in the people. Decisions are made through democratic processes like free and fair elections, freedom of speech, and the protection of the rights of minorities. However, instead of private ownership of the economy's key sectors, democratic socialists advocate for social ownership or control. This could involve worker cooperatives, public ownership, or other forms of collective control over industries like energy, transportation, and healthcare. Zoran Mondami's positions included affordability. I've never seen a campaign that didn't have affordability and high cost of living as their number one thing. He wants to freeze rent. He wants to establish a socialist or communist idea of city-owned grocery stores, which will never happen. Universal childcare, which could happen, and free buses, which could happen. Actually, around the world, you're seeing some major cities that are now offering bus service or transportation for free, and it's improved. It's been received very well by the citizens. I don't think that one's so out there. And then he wants to do building affordable housing, aim to build 200,000 new units in 10 years or 20,000 per year, which may not be enough for what New York actually needs. He wants more public safety, and he wants to create a Department of Community Safety, addressing hate crimes with more funding. And immigration, remember Mondani, a naturalized citizen born in Uganda. His parents, one a Columbia professor, the other ran a far-left advocacy group. Mondami advocated for strengthening New York City sanctuary city policies. This is becoming a problem. And of course, to pay for it all, to fund his social programs, Mondami proposes raises taxes on the wealthy and corporations. Then you have the huge issue, especially in New York City, of Mondami's strong criticism of Israel's actions in Gaza, which he has called an apartheid and genocide, and his support for BDS, or boycott, divest, and sanctions movement, which I happen to personally believe is anti-Semitic, have been met with criticism from some Jewish organizations and political figures who accuse him of anti-Semitism. He has refuted these accusations, stating his position is rooted in international law and human rights, and emphasizes his commitment to tackling anti-Semitism. To me, this rings hollow when you add to his remarks his defense of the phrase globalize the intifada. Give me a break. Calling for an intifada is a call to violence. Show me any intifada that hasn't been violent. Let's look beyond Mondami and try to understand why he was so appealing to the working class New Yorkers. Like Bernie Sanders and AOC, he too offers solutions to the problems these young people are facing. All three of them go out there and tell those in need exactly what they want to hear. I can solve all your problems by offering socialist and communist ideas, that the masses are entitled to everything and you don't have to pay for it. The rich will. This isn't new at all. It's a cornerstone of far left politics. For centuries, in every democracy, the far left makes these promises. Here in the US, we rarely, if ever, had a far left majority Congress to pass extreme changes. Even if you look at FDR, which was most left of any Congress we've ever had, wasn't as far left as what they're talking about here. It takes years of hard work to get the parts of these types of policies that are attractive to become more mainstream policies. The truth is, Bernie has been in Congress for 20 years and AOC for 6. Neither has much to show in having brought new laws and being very effective. So no, I really don't think Mondami will win. With his positions on Israel, higher taxes, socialist desires for a city-owned grocery store, and a perception of being anti-Semitic, he will bring massive amounts of money out to counter him being elected. Unlike in the primary, and because of his own views, the general election will be very highly attended. A guy like this doesn't just come along in a vacuum. He gained popularity and attention because there is no Democratic Party speaking to the public. There are no voices out there to offer more realistic policies. You don't hear realistic solutions that address the real issues people are facing. Not from the DNC, not from the congressional leaders. Where the fuck is the DNC? They're nowhere to be found. The last thing I heard was infighting because they elected David Hogg, who was 25 years old, or 24, to the committee. And then they found out he wanted to go after many of the long-term members on the committee who have been completely useless and ineffective for years. And instead of embracing the new thinking of a young leader brings to the table, he left the party leadership. These same DNC leaders have brought us to a second Trump presidency that is currently implementing Project 25 and making us into a fascist white Christian democracy without any organized pushback. Absolutely no one listens to Chuck Schumer, and Hakeem Jeffries always seems to be so rehearsed his message doesn't resonate. The party is MIA, and the PACs, the one group that should be out there advocating and shaping opinion, are also MIA. Explain to me why we have not seen a large dollar campaign involving TV, social media, and podcast campaigns explaining to America just how bad the big, beautiful bill is to the average American. Where are they? There are billionaires in the Democratic Party. It's not just the right that has money. Why haven't we seen any pushback? I have not seen a single well thought out pressure and opinion campaign now countering the right or MAGA. We no longer live in a world you can only campaign every 2 or 4 years. We must be campaigning 24/7, 365 to counter what we're facing. I want to show you what we're seeing in the press about the Democrats. So I want to talk about, I want to show you what's in the press these days. And it also makes the point that I have been making that the far left is not the party. I want to start out with this article here that is from JNS, which is Jewish News Syndicate, and their founding editor, Jonathan Tobin, wrote this article. And quite frankly, I'm very disappointed in his headline here. I understand why he did it, and I understand his points, but he's not right about his points. His headline here, as you can see, is Mondami and AOC are the Democrats of the future. I just disagree with him. He goes on and talks about what's going on in the party and all the problems in New York and all these things. And I agree with him. I don't think there's a lot to argue with there. But he goes on to say, and that is why it's important to understand that Mondami win is as revealing more about the future of the Democratic Party, both in terms of its attitudes towards Jews and Israel, which I happen to 110% agree with him, as we've witnessed on campuses in the last 2 years, and the anti-Semitism rising in this country. So I don't disagree with him on that at all. It does show that, as well as a sharp turn to the left on other issues than it does about America as its whole. And then he titles this section a left-wing Democratic base. That's where he's wrong. But the party's base belongs to the hard left, especially among the younger generation. It's just the wrong conclusion in politicians. It's up to people like AOC, the leader of the Progressive Squad, who many Democrats are now looking for leadership, the faction of the party that was led by AOC looking for leadership. Mondami's win in New York is another sign that the party's base belongs to those who are deeply influenced by toxic left-wing ideologies. That I happen to agree with him. Not so much that the party's base belongs to that. Not at all. I don't agree with that. But there are a lot of people that are influenced by these toxic left-wing ideologies. Okay, now I want to take us to another direction here. And this is from Dana Milbank, who you know is a satirist with the Washington Post, who came out and said, let's count the 3,515 ways in which the Democrats are lame. And he actually went to Nexus or one of those services and asked it how many posts there had been that were saying negative things about the Democratic Party. That's where he got the title from. And at the end, which is, of course, very satirical, but it also really says a lot about the party and something we've always known. Remember Roy Rogers always said he didn't belong to an organized party, that he was a Democrat. And this makes that same point. In summary, Democrats don't attack Trump enough, except for in cases where they attack him too much. They are too cautious and timid unless they're too aggressive. They are too woke, while at the same time too centrist. There's too much bickering within the party or not enough. They have the wrong policies, or perhaps it's the wrong message, or maybe the wrong leaders. Furthermore, Democrats need to build, regroup, go on the offensive, blah, 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 blah. And at the end, he says, Democrats need to be particularly rigorous and introspective about why they are so unpopular. Alternatively, they could pack it in with the introspection and just go out and win an election. He's right. Instead of wasting our time on all this, we need to get serious about just winning. Then I go here, and this is the New York Times. This was a little bit earlier in June, where David Brooks wrote this column in the New York Times, and he says the Democratic problems are bigger than you think. And he really makes some great points here that I want to bring out. And this is a very serious article, and I think that he really hits it on the nail on the head. He says, I have a lot of Democratic friends who are extremely disappointed with their party leaders. They tell me that the Democratic Party is currently rudderless, weak, passive, lacking a compelling message. I try to be polite, but I want to tell them the problem is not the party leaders. The problem is you. You don't understand how big of a shift we're in the middle of. You think the Democrats can solve their problems with a new message, a new leader, but the Democratic challenge is that they have to adapt to a new historical era. That's not something done by working politicians who are focused on fundraising and the next election. That's only accomplished by visionaries and people willing to shift their entire worldview. That's up to you, my friends, not Chuck Schumer. There have been only a few world-shifting political movements over the past century and a half. The totalitarian movement, which led to communism revolutions in places like Russia and China, and fascist coups in places like Germany. The welfare state movement, which led the U.S. to the New Deal. The liberation movement, which led from the 60s on to anti-colonialism, the civil rights, feminism, and LGBT movement. The market liberalism movement, which led to Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher, and in their own context, Deng Xiaoping and Mikhail Gorbachev. And finally, the globalist populist movement, which has led to Donald Trump, Viktor Orban, Brexit, and in their own context, Modi, Putin, and Xi Jinping. The global populist movement took off sometime in the early 2010s. It was driven by a comprehensive sense of social distrust, a firm conviction that the social systems of society were rigged, corrupted, and malevolent. He goes on to say, and this point is so solid. Trump tells a clear story. The elites are screwing America. He took a free trade party and made it a protectionist party, an internationalist party, and made an isolationist party. I mean, he couldn't be more right. And Trump, we know he's a liar, and we can't trust what's coming out of his mouth, but he's very clear about what he says to the people. Many of my Democratic friends have not fully internalized the magnitude of this historical shift, but they are still thinking within the confines of the Clinton, Obama, Biden, Pelosi worldview. But I have a feeling over the next few years, the tumult of events will push Democrats on some new trajectory. The Democratic Party is going to be as dramatically transformed by the Trump revolution, for good or bad, as the Republican Party is. I think he's right on the money. And then lastly, I want to share with you Chris Cillizza, who did a post on his Substack, which he did an interview with a guy by the name of Matt Bennett. For those of you that don't know who Matt Bennett is, and you probably don't, he's the co-founder of a center-left think tank in Washington called The Third Way. This think tank was actually founded back in the late 90s by Hillary and Bill Clinton. And I want to say that Lieberman was part of it, and I don't remember who else. I actually met with them back in the day when I was working with the party, and Clinton was still in office. Bennett's contention, Cillizza says that when we talk and we think about the base of the Democratic Party, we tend to assume that it's very, very liberal. The faces we associate with the party are people like AOC and Bernie Sanders. Bennett's contention is that the people, including plenty of Democrats, confuse the party's activist wing with its actual base. The former is smaller and more liberal. The latter is larger and much more moderate. And here he explains the difference. So the core, activist core, the people that are most online, the people that show up at the oligarchy tours, rallies, the people that organize and get out for the No King protests, those people are enormously important to the Democrats. I am not denigrating our activist base. They're great, but they are a minority. group. And what a whole bunch of commentators fail to see is that we're never going to nominate Bernie Sanders. When you think about a base, it's the base of what is a pyramid, right? And that means numerically it has to be bigger. And that's not the super engaged activist left. That's the moderate core of our party. Remember, this last election, Biden got what I think 79 million votes and Trump got 82 or 3 million votes. That's a lot of people. And believe me, you got 150, 160, 170 million people in this country that are not to the far right and they are not to the far left. Most of them are in the center. So I want to say to Jonathan Tobin, while he's concerned, and I get his point, he's wrong about the AOC and Mondami being the head of or being the show of the party. We need more than new leadership. We need a new vision for America, one that addresses these young workers, many working class that rightfully feel let down by capitalism, but a vision that is not so radical like what we hear from AOC, et cetera, a vision that sounds rational and doable. Additionally, we need large money donors to really take up the cause, to fund a new PAC whose only job is to run and fund a national marketing campaign that counters Trump, MAGA, and the GOP, and those billionaires funding Trump, MAGA, and the GOP, and fund them on social media and TV 24/7, 365. We have so much to do, yet we see our leadership, our institutions doing nothing. And this allows Trump and Vance and Project 2025 to fill in and take over America. There is much to discuss and much work to do to get our country back and maybe, just maybe, save democracy. Please, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and please share this with your friends and family. We have so much to do. That includes you. Thank you, and see you in the next video.